The Philadelphia Flyers have surprised a lot of people this season, and they are in the thick of the playoff race right now in the Metropolitan Division. Rachel Donner of Locked On Flyers joins us to discuss how this team is getting it done and what their prospects are for the future. All this and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Well, it is my pleasure to welcome to the Monday show my regular Friday co-host, Rachel Donner of Locked On Flyers, and a good time to be a Flyers fan, Rachel.
It really is. It has been so much fun to watch this team. I think, one of the big things with this team right now is that they're playing with confidence. They have this resiliency that we have not seen from the Flyers in a few years, I would say, where they're just not letting losses get to them in a negative way that causes them to spiral. Whereas last year's team, they would just get into these just awful stretches where nothing would go right and they couldn't get themselves out of it. Well, now they're just oh, that's fine. We'll move on. Next game. Let's go. And I think there's a lot to it. I think there's a lot they still need to work on, but all in all, it's been a fun stretch of the season so far.
Why do you think that attitude has changed? Is that on John Tortorella? Is it on the players? A little of both?
I would say a little of both. I think that one of the things that's been working well for the Flyers this year is that last season, I think they were playing Tortorella's full-on defensive style of play with blocking a ton of shots and, just hunkering down, and really didn't have as much freedom offensively to try different things. And this year, there's really more of a hybrid approach where they're taking a ton of shots. Now, their shooting percentage is not great, and that's one of the things they need to work on is their finish a little bit. But they're taking a ton of shots from different areas of the ice, showing different looks, being aggressive offensively, while at the same time still maintaining that defensive posture. They're still, blocking shots. And I think they're smart about situationally, which games does it make more sense to emphasize one versus the other. I think the other big thing right now is the penalty kill. We did a whole segment on today's show on Locked On Flyers about the stretch of games since they were the first team to lose to the San Jose Sharks, which was a huge narrative. But you know what? It's been a big turning point for both teams, I would say, for the Sharks and for the Flyers. The Flyers are 12-3-2 since that game. In that stretch, they have the number one penalty kill in the NHL. And that's just been a tremendous help to the Flyers this season.
Yeah, the penalty kill ranked so high, and yet the power play has struggled. What's going on? The special teams are half great and half problematic.
I know. It is really fascinating to watch because, you almost want to wish for a penalty kill because Flyers have also scored a ton of shorthanded goals this season, which is something they started last season a little bit, but has gotten even better this year. Brad Shaw, the assistant coach, his power kill has worked out remarkably with the Flyers personnel. Might not have thought so, given, Ivan Provorov is gone and all of that, but Travis Sanheim has stepped up on that front. Cam York has stepped up on that front. So that's what's good. The power play, just dreadful. I think that there's a couple of things going on. So if you look at what I was talking about with the shooting percentage not being great, Flyers just aren't getting the right shots, and they're not as good at doing that thing that a lot of successful power plays do in cycling the puck to be able to create those opportunities. They're just not as good at doing that. And I think they need to maybe shuffle the personnel around a little bit and figure out what's going to make sense. I think that they don't have a good, strong, permanent net front presence on this team either. So I think they've been rotating people through that way. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I also think the other thing going on here is that, you talk about a lot of success that a lot of these guys are having. The one guy that really is in a rut right now is Cam Atkinson, and he would be a huge part of a successful power play, right?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Goaltending has been really, really good. Carter Hart, as always, and yet, against the Red Wings, a 1-0 shutout win, and it's not Carter Hart in goal, but it's Samuel Ersson. So, talk to me about the goaltending because statistically, they're not that far apart.
Right. So, yeah, I think Carter Hart is having a really solid season. I think he struggled with some illnesses. A lot of guys around the league have been out with, flus or viruses or whatever is happening that I think the general population honestly is dealing with right now. It's just, happening to the hockey players as well. So yeah, he's had like two bouts of this, whatever it is. But Sam Ersson has absolutely stepped up here. He's got a couple of shootout wins. He's got a couple of shutout wins, and has really been just part of this tandem that's been the backbone of this Flyers game. And I think that allows, especially in that aforementioned power kill with both of these goalies, the Flyers feel really confident in taking those chances on the penalty kill because they know they have a really solid goaltender. Is it gonna be a Vezina year for either one of them? No. But is it fantastic enough that the Flyers are doing that and taking those chances? Absolutely, and I think that's been a big part of it as well.
Got to talk about Travis Konechny leading the team in goals with 16 and points with 25. What is the key to his success this year?
Yeah, I think that's part of the overall confidence of the team right now in that he has been in the past more of a streaky player where he has like 4 or 5 really great games and then won't score for 9 or 10. I think that's like part of this mentality where all of them are getting their moments and he's just not backing down. He has not had that downward stretch yet to kind of lose his confidence and feel snake bitten. And he's a real leader on this team. And, even when he's not scoring, he's making plays. He's always trying to make plays. He's on that power kill, which, when he had started his career, if you told me Travis Konechny would be playing on the penalty kill, I would have laughed in your face. But he's been a huge part of it. And I think he's, worked his way in there real nicely. And he's just a leader on this team and he's leading by example.
So the Flyers are sort of ahead of where a lot of people thought they would be in this rebuilding process. How do you think the team approaches the rest of this season, the trade deadline, assuming they're still in the hunt?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because, you look at our most recent opponent, the Detroit Red Wings. You look at them last season, right? Where they were on the borderline, maybe could have made the playoffs, really close to the trade deadline. Steve Yzerman makes the decision that I know we're close, but we got to think big picture here. And they were sellers at the trade deadline, right? I feel like the Flyers are gonna be in a similar situation. Now, if they're solidly in the playoffs, that's one thing, but I don't think they're gonna be buyers no matter what. I think they're just going to be more strategic sellers if they're in that borderline or maybe bottom of the playoff, positioning. I think that it's just they're very, very adamant that they know they're in a rebuild. Danny Briere talked about it very recently, in the past week, that it's not going to change what their overarching plan is right now, that they're really thrilled to see this success, but they want to be able to build on that and they're going to be smart about it. And I think that is the right way to approach it. That I think, they have Carter Hart contract negotiations to deal with coming up. And I think that, Travis Konechny, they have a potential to sell really, really high here, but do they want him to be part of the future? I think both of those questions are to be determined.
Well, we shall see. I know you'll be there for the rest of the season, giving us all updates. Rachel, why don't you tell us where we can find the podcast, where we can find you and your co-host on social media?
Yeah, of course, I do the Locked On Flyers show with my brilliant co-host, Russ Cohen, who is a prospect expert as well. We are at Locked On Flyers pretty much everywhere on social media these days. And I am at R. Miriam, and Russ is at Sportsology.
All right, Rachel, always a pleasure, and we'll see you on Friday.
Yep.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. And the app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options like spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And it's not just the NFL. You've got the college bowl season coming up, college basketball, the NBA, and you could even use your knowledge of the NFL on FanDuel. So check out all the latest odds. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.